Welcome back to the Performance Matters podcast series. In this final episode of our AI Matters series, we bring Chris King back, one of our hosts of all of these episodes, to reflect on the many remarkable interviews and knowledge gained through this particular series. We want to thank Chris for his great work and all the wonderful people who attended and added value to the content throughout the series. We hope you enjoy this wrap-up. All right, friends, welcome back to another Performance Matters podcast. It's nice to be back. It took a bit of a break there for a while, but for all the right reasons, because we embarked on a pretty remarkable journey. And I can't thank my colleague and dear friend who's joining me today, as well as one who could not be with us because he's just busy at stuff. And that would be the world-renowned Dr. Conrad Gottfredson. But his sidekick in this whole thing, who also did a remarkable job, is Chris King. So Chris, welcome. Great to have you here.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so how we thought we'd put a bow around this for now, Chris, and it is for now, because this will be with us, as we'll talk about, frankly, from some of our learnings for a long time, if not forever, in whatever shape or form it takes, right? But we interviewed 7 remarkable people. And I think he actually, even we kicked it off a little bit, I think, Chris, with you and I, or maybe just you and Con, frankly, talking a little bit about, sort of the series and what we were grounded in. But there's been a lot of lessons learned, as is the nature of the beast of this thing. So this was the AI's Matters series. And the irony of the whole thing is in the 7 weeks or whatever, probably more, 2 months or so that the series went on, AI was probably remarkably different than it was when the series started.
Yes. Lots
which
of
is one of the lessons learned, right? So what we thought we'd do here is to kind of put a bow around this. Again, just for now, we're going to revisit in the fall, I think, when we come back around to whatever or wherever it is then, as we kind of go into the summer here. We thought, Chris, it'd be wonderful if you wouldn't mind, for those who may not have listened to the whole series, frankly, or those that listened to all of it, but of course it was in its own disparate parts, we thought we would have you come back and sort of give us highlights from each individual. By no means all the outline, you got to listen for that, but things you took away that you felt were meaningful, that each one sort of stood for or represented. So let's start with our dear friend Vince Hahn, who, by the way, shameless plug, you go to the Workflow Learning Alliance, which you're welcome to join now on LinkedIn. We just today got off a wonderful live event with Vince on his remarkable view. The guy is an 11-year chatbot expert, mobile coach, really very grounded in this. Chris, do you think? So what were your takeaways from Vince's message of the other folks?
Yeah. So Vince's message really was around the future is here and now. I mean, I think you stated it. He's got a long history of experience with chatbots, and he's been working with AI the whole time. So long before OpenAI unveiled this thing that has rocked everybody's world, ChatGPT, he's been incorporating AI into his chatbot. So nothing that has happened over the last 2 years has really been a surprise to Vince.
Yeah.
And his view is the things that you can do are the things that you can imagine with it. So he had a very optimistic view of how the technology might be utilized. And he helped us envision a future case study where imagine a digital coach that is with you on the shop floor or at your desk, wherever you are, that sees what you're seeing and then can use a holographic finger to point at the thing that it needs you to do to accomplish the thing that you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, it really is. And we're not that far off. I mean, you think about it, we've got Meta glasses now that they can project things up on the screen. They have cameras built into them. They hear things. They can talk to you. We're recording this the same week that ChatGPT or OpenAI has released ChatGPT 4.0, and the O stands for Omni, which is omni-channel, which means talk, see, hear. So all of the senses are starting to wrap up. And OpenAI is really democratizing access because they've said ChatGPT 4.0 is ChatGPT now. And so whereas before you had a paid version and a free version, and the free version was very much a lesser AI,
right?
This new model of AI that's come out that OpenAI is saying is for everybody is really going to change people's understanding of what it can do.
Well, he's always been wonderful for me too, Chris, in that he's always like, generative AI is what triggered all of this, not AI. Right. We've had AI in its phases throughout oh my gosh, like forever. And, I think you used to talk about, you book a flight and the price you get and the kind of deal, that's all being data driven and AI driven in the background. for all these kinds of things. So like any technology, there's milestones, right? Or there's pivots.
Yep.
And the pivot here really is not AI. The pivot is generative AI and large language models and these things that, again, we're there, I'm sure, actually, leading up to that. But this trigger of it really seeming intelligent.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure it was in those things that I described earlier, but it wasn't as omnipresent as this whole thing has gotten.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because we still don't know, the researchers that are developing these AI models still don't know what they can't do.
Right.
So every time they chat, they say, well, we can't do this. Somebody out there in the world, they use the wisdom of the crowd, and
Sure.
somebody comes up with a way that the AI can do the thing that somebody said can't be done. So there, it is really still evolving, and it's going to be interesting, and I think accelerating too. Just the pace of this is not going to slow down anytime soon.
Yep.
So
So a little balance for all that was Angie Hubert
yes, Angie Hubert from Meta,
from
and
Meta.
her message was sometimes you got to go slow so you can go fast. And her and her team have been integrating AI into the learning that they're building
Mm-hmm.
over at Meta. But in order to be able to generate the kind of fantastic results that they're starting to see now, they spent years tagging metadata. It's, the blocking and tackling of content management, right?
Yeah.
It is down to the nitty gritty, and that is how she and her team were able to accomplish what they've been able to accomplish because they spent the time organizing things, getting things so that it's searchable, so that it has references built into it. And I think that my takeaway from our conversation with Angie is you can do incredible things, but you got to do the hard work to
Yeah. It's funny, when you're talking again, I'm just referencing back to this conversation. It's just so fresh in my mind with Vince a little while ago, is that L&D is looking for places to step into this and show their value, and not just for the sake of, but what's the evolution of our role and such. And Vince and I kind of went a little deep on the fact that a lot of organizations have knowledge management systems. They've had them forever. Content management systems, some of which may just have sat dormant because the whole dream of reusable objects and such that it started out with was really not. I don't know if it was ready for prime time or whatever, but we can kind of step back into these in some powerful ways because a lot of organizations have a lot of data and a
Mhm.
lot of content and a lot of knowledge, tacit knowledge and such. So be interesting to see where that all goes.
Yep.
He also talked about open AI and stuff is native. He called it native AI as opposed to corporate AI.
Hmm.
And I think we're going to talk in just a moment about some of our other guests talked about the realities of this thing creeping inside the firewall and being a part of corporations. And he said it's kind of analogous to Google, which when it first came out and was open and we searched on it for how to fix plumbing, everyone said, okay, well, I want Google in my company.
Right.
And it didn't quite find its way there
Right.
as quickly or easily as it could have. So let's actually, if you don't, I'm going to jump around a little bit. You mind if we do
Okay.
that? Because I
Okay. Yeah.
think going to our Josh,
Yeah, Josh
right?
Cavalier. So Josh talked to us about all of the experience that he's had in just talking about AI with people and some of the things that he's hearing. And the banner that he is waving right now is governance. It's
Yeah.
about policies. What kind of guardrails are you setting up in your organization? Are you using AI in an organization that does not have a published policy about how to use AI? And the answer is, and I saw survey results earlier this week that said the overwhelmingly, yes, people are using. 80% of workers have said, 83, something 84% of workers have said they're using AI to help them with their jobs, but only 50 or 56% or so, something like that, of companies are saying they have a policy in place. So,
Yep.
hey, guess what? This is happening, and this is
Yep.
it's kind of a grassroots revolution because AI benefits the individual workers first, and then the
Mm,
organization second. And
mm.
so, while the organizations are still trying to sort things out, individual workers are using this and they're doing it. And Josh's point is, hey, you got to start thinking about how you're going to guide people and make sure they're not doing the wrong things with AI in your organization because they're already using it. So you
Yep.
need to get out in front of this.
Yeah. A leadership role that
Right. Right.
that
And when we think about L&D leaders, we often think, well, we're the last in the bread line, but we're also in a unique position right now because people are trying to learn about AI.
Agreed.
So we can work on our the upper tiers of our organization that we're talking with about, what do you need? But also, how about just offering, hey, let's work on a course that will teach people how to use AI ethically and make sure you're using it well.
Yeah, it's interesting because IT is going to wag the tail of this dog to start, right? Because that's where they're going to. But I think L&D can offer a stabilizing voice on the UI side and the productivity side, which is where everyone wants this tool to go from a performance perspective, like we talk with 5 moments and other kinds of things, and digital coaches. Then it's just lying in IT from a code and firewall, and it's got to go through HR for privacy and policy and those things to get all that, but that's guardrails, not productivity per
Right.
se, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the other part that we can contribute to the conversation. It's not just, hey, let's help you set up a policy, but let's help people understand how they can use AI to
Yep.
be more productive. I mean, all the studies that I've read are showing that it has a remarkable impact on the medium performers in your organization. Medium to low performers get the biggest productivity boost from AI.
Yep.
High performers get a little bit of a boost, but not as much as the mid and the lower tiers of your performers. So why not? You want to talk about a quick productivity boost in your organization, teach people how to use AI, and then your low performers become mid performers and your mid performers become high performers.
Yep.
You don't even have to hire anybody,
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Cool.
that's the message I think that Josh is promoting.
So
Mike Ruska, man, this guy, he is a big thinker, and I really enjoyed our conversation with him. He's all about agents, and he was talking about agents. It was earlier in the year when we were talking with him, so he was ahead of the ball game. I think nowadays, when you're listening to this podcast, most people will know what an agent is in terms of AI. But Mike's big thing is AI is going to augment but not replace us.
Hmm.
He talked with us, with Con and I, about, he tied this back to Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a book that Danny Kahneman wrote a few years ago. But he talks about the machinery of thought in there and how there's this fast and slow thinking that goes on in our brains at the same time. He calls them system one and system two. System one is the fast, instinctual, gut feeling kind
Hmm.
of thinking, and
Hmm.
slow thinking is system two. And Mike says AI's wheelhouse is system two thinking. It's
Hmm.
that slow, methodical, let me reason everything out. Let me pull in all of the data that I have and make a reasoned decision, not that snap judgment. And Mike's point is you need both.
Yeah.
You need both the snap judgment and the reasoned, measured approach to things. And so when you combine the two together, our instinctual understanding combined with a system that can pull from a vast body of knowledge, you get the best of both worlds there.
And I wonder, Chris, too, Khan's always talked about the power of a digital coach around cognitive load,
Mhm.
right? And it's that part of innovation and creativity and high level thinking is you got to have the horsepower and the clarity and the energy to do it. And if you're mired in routine and mundane and confusing stuff, the ability for the brain to let that go and get to those other things, so this may play a powerful role in that, allowing for that kind of thinking,
Yes.
that kind of the higher level stuff you talked about.
Yeah, and being able to help to remember things. I mean, you think about how long you have to work to get that level of expertise where you can instinctually pull in learning theory into the instructional approaches that you're building into a course, say, for instance. And now I can just say, hey, ChatGPT, I have these learning objectives. I'd like to, what are some evidence-based ways for me to teach this? And it
Yeah.
can it can go out and it remembers all the different learning theories, and it can tell you this is a constructivist approach, this is activating multimedia theory, and there's all kinds of things that can happen when you've got that extra boost
Yeah.
to cognitive abilities. It's expanding the space that we have for that cognitive horsepower.
Wow. Sarah.
Sarah Mercier. She's from Tennessee. She says, or from where I'm from, it's Mercier.
Yeah.
Um, but she is, as you may well know, Sarah is big into accessibility and opening
Mhm.
up
Mhm.
learning to people that are not traditionally our audiences. And her take on AI when we talked with her was really about the ability of AI to help us meet the design challenge of opening up the learning that we're building to so many more people.
Mm.
She talked about 26% of the people in the US have a diagnosed or a disclosed disability.
Mm.
And our courses are not always geared to people with disabilities,
Of course.
regardless of what that disability is. And so, from a learning perspective, she says, how can we tap into that 26% of the population and bring them to the table and really kind of leverage their talent? So,
Mm.
Sarah's got a really, she says design challenges are one of the strong suites of AI. And I
And
agree with
solving
her.
design challenges,
Yes.
taking
Yeah.
on design challenges.
Correct.
And
Design.
especially the nuances of them, right? Not the bell curve and teaching to the middle all
Yes.
the time, but the
Yeah.
nuances of those that fall out of the norm, if that's even the right word.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That's
Awesome.
right.
Alan Coe.
Alan. So Alan actually works with Angie over at Meta, and I love talking with Alan because he talked a lot about how he made himself future ready. And I loved that phrase. I wrote it down because future ready is exactly where we need to be, all of us. But his message is if you want to be future ready, there is no substitute for learning by doing, which ironically is a theme for us, right?
Yeah.
But he says you have to embrace continuous learning because it's changing all the time. And he jumped right into this. And when generative AI exploded, he said, I'm not going to be left behind. And so he started teaching himself, but more importantly, he just started experimenting.
Yep.
And I think he was in a good place because Angie had such a vision for how to integrate AI into the work that they're doing over at Meta. Alan was able to really kind of leverage the things he was teaching himself right away and
Yep.
have immediate impacts within the team and within the organization. And his conversation with Khan was really inspiring for me just because I'm a big doer. I like to do things. I like to learn things by doing things. And so I'm going to continue to make myself future ready by learning, by doing, and continuous learning.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're the cobbler's children who have no shoes, right?
Right.
It's and fear is not a reason to ignore anything. A lot of times you're afraid of what you don't understand.
Mhm.
And with understanding comes calm and courage and rationality in these things. And so for many, it's irrational right now to them. So yeah, we should mirror what we ask of anyone that we subject our deliverables to, right? Which is we should be, and that's your point earlier about if you're going to be a strategic leader in the organization when they develop the policies. I mean, it all plays into each other here, right? You've got to be a practitioner, not an expert per se,
Yep.
but you really got to be a practitioner at what you're doing with these things.
Yep.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And
So
and
putting
that kind
forward.
of leads us to our last one, and that's Markus.
Yep.
Markus Barnhart, you want to talk about a remarkable guy. He has done it all in terms of all the different industries. Government, he's worked for the government, he's worked for academia, he's been a headmaster at a school, and he's a PhD scientist. He says, hey, don't worry, everybody has FOMO right now. Everybody feels like they're falling behind on this, but you aren't as behind as you think you are because nobody is the expert in this yet.
Right.
There's nobody out there that really, has 10 years of experience with generative AI. At least nobody that we have access to,
Right.
unless maybe you live in Silicon Valley, like Markus does. I think it's a great reminder, and it ties back to Alan's message also, that there's the only way you can learn how to do this. You can't call somebody up and say, how do I do this? Because they don't necessarily know either. They're
Sure.
still trying to figure it out themselves too.
Mm.
So you've just got yourself, and you've got to rely on your own abilities and then carving out the time to do it yourself. I think my own experience with this reflects that also, because for the first 20 hours I spent with ChatGPT, I was just floored by the magic that was happening.
Sure.
But on hour 21, I started to notice the little quirks. And it's little things like ChatGPT uses the word crucial a lot. And unless you're teaching a course on crucial conversations, I would
Yeah.
be willing to bet you never use the word crucial.
Right. Right.
And so you have to use it enough to start to see past the wow factor and
Yeah.
to start to see where the weak spots are.
It's funny. Again, Vince really apologized about keep going back to this. Again, he brought up a wonderful thing about the fact that it goes out, it's not intelligent.
Right.
It doesn't really learn yet per
Right.
se, right? It's just a remarkable aggregator of a whole lot of data points,
Mhm.
word by word. And so he goes, it's really interesting because it may go out. The example he gave I thought was brilliant. And this is the whole idea about our ability if you're a corporate learning professional listening to this, how we really have to help contextualize and almost lead or guide in this. He said, look, if you're a first time manager and you have somebody and you work for a burger joint and you're a manager of that store and you're hiring all these kids, they're coming in and you have some that just keep coming late. They don't come on time. And so you go, okay, I want to know, what's our policy on late? It goes, the reality is if you ask ChatGPT that, it's going to go out and pull from every policy it knows around the world and all the ones that are maybe in your state and stuff, but there may not be ABC Burger Inc. And it'll say, well, most people after the third time of, I'm making all that up, but it states it like a statement.
Yeah.
It never says I might be or kind of or everything is written like a statement.
Yeah. It's
And so
confident.
and so that first year manager is going to go, okay, well, great. Okay, so third time we fire him. Then corporate burger, whatever, goes, no, 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 no.
Mhm.
That's not our policy. So weeding out the reality of things that come across like fact
Yeah.
and contextualizing them for the workflow and for performance, I think it's going to be a real important humanistic role to step into, if that's the right way to
Yeah.
use it.
No, I think it talks to Mike's point that AI will augment us and not replace us because,
Great point.
and to Angie's point about doing the hard work, right? So you still have to be an expert in a field to be able to know whether AI is telling the truth or not, right? So
Right.
there's always the expert is not going away. It is not going, but what's going to happen is the AI is going to make the expert faster,
Right.
stronger, more efficient. Uh,
Right.
and just take some of the drudgery
Yeah.
away. Like I think about writing test questions for courses. It's the thing I hate the most about
Yep.
designing anything in our space.
Yep.
And I've figured out a prompt that will get ChatGPT to write a beautiful question for me with 3 distractors and 1 right answer, but then also write feedback that tells you why the wrong answer is the wrong answer and reinforces why the right answer is the right answer. And it
Yeah.
can do that in 20 seconds. Whereas for me, it would be an hour per question, and I would hate my life while I was doing it.
And we'd probably not do it well.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, we kind of got to that around the idea that, you and I, my friend, have been in workflow learning for years. And one of the things our designers runs headlong into are the heavy lift of getting information from SMEs,
Mhm.
writing all the tasks,
Yep.
supporting knowledge and validating it, these kinds of things and so on, finding where the resources are in the organization to then make our design and our deliverable better and quicker.
Yep.
It frees us from that anchor
Yeah.
of the drudgery of those, and frankly may do it better so that then our design and what we move into and support and help our learners learn and those types of things is just that much, it lifts us from that regard, right? Versus
Yes.
that all that cognitive load. There it is again, right? Of the drudgery of writing tasks. So Chris, let's wrap this up. When it's interesting as we prepared for this and I could see you reflecting back and sort of having each remarkable dialogue bubble to the top. You're 2.5-ish or so months into this. Where are you now? What is your hope, your learning, your aha, your concern? When I lob those conditions out, what comes top of mind?
I think my concern for us as an industry, just broadly, my concern is that we're going to insist on doing it the old way
Yeah.
still. And
Yep.
like with any technology, when you start out with that technology, you are only thinking about how to use that technology to do the thing you're familiar with.
You're right.
Like when television first came around, the first television shows were just radio programs with a camera in front of everybody
Right.
because nobody had any idea of how to do something different. And I
Right.
worry in our industry, we are very tradition bound. Addy is quite the straitjacket in terms of we can't seem to get away from it. It's got its place. It's still a valid approach for developing learning, but I think we all can all agree it's a little creaky in this modern age where things change so much. So that waterfall approach to developing things. And I worry that our industry is not going to innovate fast enough and will wind up left behind because of that.
And unfortunately, we have a history of this.
Yes.
I mean, I can go back in e-learning, I can go back to a whole lot of things. And our first efforts were very much just a reflection of our current construct. And we took years, if we ever, some would argue, we never really moved beyond that in how effective or good e-learning is. How many years is it? 20 some odd plus years old by now or whatever. And many, if you compared earlier models beyond the page turners to what we have today,
much different.
I took a cybersecurity class the other day, and oh my goodness, was it embarrassing. But so I think you're right.
Well, so I balance that worry with the grassroots swell that I'm seeing, the innovation that I'm seeing from individuals. I mean, you can't go on LinkedIn in our space now without tripping over somebody talking about some new thing that they're doing. And it's, it's not just the vendors either. It's the individual practitioners out there figuring things out, figuring out how to integrate the affordances that AI brings and how to make their output better. I've talked to so many instructional designers who are now actually building evidence-based courses because they know how to pull in all of the evidence, how to which of these things are actually working versus which things are not. And I think that grassroots swell is going to be the antidote to the worry that I have. But then I also have to say, so for organizations, please, Josh talked a lot about it, but I've heard Markus talk about it too. I've been in a conference with Markus where he asked a room full of people, how many of you have an AI policy? And of the 60 people in the room, 2 people raised their hand.
Right.
And that was just in February of this year. It's not like that was in 2022. Right. So I think there's real need for the leadership, whether it's learning leaders or whether it's broadly business leaders, to think hard about how they want to use AI in their organization, and then to talk to their organization about that.
Well, let's use it to move into apply.
Yes.
Right. So, the 5 moments is what we pivot on, right? And our methodology, our tools, our designs and stuff having to move into this as a discipline across all five moments has hindered us. One of our people we admire, we didn't actually get the chance to interview him, but Donald Clark, he says this is not an instructional tool. This is a performance support tool.
Yes.
And you might learn. Of course, you'll learn. Life is a teacher.
Yep.
But workflow learning is the nature of learning while doing. And he goes, this is so seated and so suited perfectly for that sweet spot. Let's get our arms around it as an industry. And obviously we have a receptive audience. Fought for years, Chris, to get digital coaches in organizations. Right. But they push back on LMS and things they've already gotten. Well, everyone, to your point, is wondering what this is going to do.
Yeah. And
so why don't we step through that door?
It's on us, Bob, to figure out how do we get that 5 moments in need framework layered in to AI so that when a performer goes to AI and says, how do I fill out a travel reimbursement form? AI knows, okay, I've got this vast set of data and all of these job aids and SOPs and everything that I can reference for travel reimbursement. And going back to Angie, I've done all the metadata so that it knows the right things to pull out, and I've got confidence it's going to tell the truth. But then the 5 moments of need layer in there says, when someone asks you how to do that, start with the tasks and the steps. Start with the performance support pyramid. Give that first as your answer. Don't give it all the context yet, and only ask later, do you need more context? But lead with the to-do, lead with the steps, lead with
the irony is, it's summative. It loves summarizing first. Right. I mean, if you go on Google on your phone and you turn on the auto generate stuff and you ask any question, including a how to, it starts with, well, here's why how to is important. And it gives you the whole history of plumbing.
Yes.
Right? And so in there lies the design. In there lies the construct of us using a powerful tool to do what we should be doing better.
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely the future for digital coaches. I couldn't agree more. And it's just a matter of building in that framework, that way to think about it. That moment of apply is the most important moment. So let's make sure AI knows that too.
Powerful. Chris, great stuff. Thanks so much, friend. Great series. We'll invite you back in the fall when we take a step back into that again, because we'd love to see, in context of all this great thinking, maybe our first episode in the fall is, okay, reflecting back on what we learned from these guys
Yeah.
back in the spring, look where we are now.
Let's
And
have a
look how
couple of
some
them
of
on
these,
as a panel, Bob, and
yeah,
just
that would
say,
be, wouldn't that be powerful?
yeah,
Yeah,
where are we now?
let's get them all on there and remind them of their dialogue 3-6 months ago.
Yeah.
And where are they sitting now?
Yep.
Great stuff, Chris. Thanks so much for your friendship, your thirst for learning, and how you're pushing us into this, even in our company and as an industry. So much appreciate you hosting the series.
Absolutely, Bob. It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
Well, that's it for this episode of the 5 Moments of Need AI Matters podcast series. We look forward to future conversations about how to best put the 5 Moments of Need into practice with artificial intelligence. We welcome your feedback and can be reached on LinkedIn at the 5 Moments of Need or on our website, www.5momentsofneed.com. We hope you're finding these helpful and that you'll subscribe for future episodes. Have a great day, friends.